Welcome to this episode of the Smart Leaders Sell podcast. I'm Jessica Lorimer, sales coach and leadership expert, and I am really excited to dig down into today's episode. Okay, so today we are going and covering off a basic, all right? I think this has happened to everybody, and I want to talk about it transparently. Oh, it sounds so intriguing, doesn't it? So today we're talking about what to do when you make a bad investment. Da, da, da. I'm quite excited about this because I don't think we talk about it often enough in the online space, and yet I see so many people who come to me and they go, Jess, I worked with a coach, or I spent this money on this course, or I bought this program, or I took this service, and guess what? It just wasn't great. And it makes me feel two things. One, really angry, because I feel like if you are selling something, then you should deliver. So I hear from a lot of people who've spent a ton of money on being coached, and they're quite literally coached out and cashed out. They're like, I have no more money to spend on coaching. My business isn't where I wanted it to be. And also, I'm really done with talking to mentors and coaches and prospective people that could help me because I just don't believe them anymore. And I get really angry about that because that means we're sapping away people's integrity and we're causing real problems to their livelihood. So that's the first reason I don't like it. And the second reason is sometimes, and we're going to talk about this, sometimes it's a red flag for me. If somebody has made literally, hundreds of bad investments, I'm like, oh, is it the investments or is it your lack of willing to do the work required to achieve the results? So we're going to talk about this today. It is one of my favorite things to discuss because it's so juicy, but also pretty controversial. So, hit me up on Instagram or by email and let me know what your thoughts are after the episode. Let's dig in. Now, this all came up because I was having a chat with my mum this week. So as you all know, I talk about my mum a lot. I talk to her every day. And we were talking on Tuesday about expectation versus reality. My mum had bought a mop online. My mum doesn't buy things online that often. She doesn't really trust the internet. So she bought this mop online. It's like a big deal for her. And she had bought this mop and it had said that it was like the best thing ever and that she could use it on any surface except carpet, obviously, and that it would be brilliant and great for her bad back, etc., etc. And anyway, it turns up and it's made for a child. Like the mop is made for somebody who is definitely under 4 foot. So it's not really helping her with her bad back because she basically has to like kneel and crawl around the house mopping, which isn't ideal. But we were having this chat and I kind of tongue-in-cheek reminded my mum of an experience that I'd had as a teenager, having been dumped by my first boyfriend for somebody who was infinitely more attractive than I was at that time. Read, she didn't have braces and she wasn't cursed with skin that, erupted with like what I thought were boils at the time, but, just teenage acne. And I reminded her of this situation and said, I cried for weeks about this because my expectations in that relationship were not met. I was not in a princess dress by 20 getting married to this particular also spotty teenager. And my mum for the first couple of weeks was kind of sympathetic. And then after that was just like, look, what did you learn from this experience? Stop crying, focus on the learning experience, and let's, for the love of God, move on. And we did. And this is the same thing when we make a bad investment, right? It can really be damaging to our businesses because we can start thinking, oh my God, I made this terrible investment. I'm not investing ever again. And at 17, I could have decided I have had one boyfriend. He is terrible. I will never, ever invest any time or energy into meeting a partner again. Incidentally, wish that I had practiced that through my 20s. I could have saved myself a lot of heartache if I'd have just done that until I was like 20, 24, 25. But anyway, we make these poor investments. We invest in potentially the wrong people. We invest in potentially the wrong programs or products or services. And then we don't want to invest ever again because we are worried about the pain that we're going to experience. We use that fear to drive the rest of our decision making. And so it can be really, really challenging for somebody who has been burnt before, genuinely burnt by a program or a coach or a mentor, to go ahead and invest in something else, because the decision now is twice as scary. Not only are they concerned that they may not get the results, but also they're like, oh my God, I've done this before. I've been in this situation before and it didn't work. So they've got validation. Okay. And we have to start thinking, because in business, you're going to have to take a lot of risks, and your clients are always going to have to take risks in you, whatever industry you work in. So we have to start thinking about, how can we accept that poor investments or bad investments are something that, unfortunately, and it really is unfortunate and horrible and frustrating and all of the other negative adjectives you could possibly find. But ultimately, we have to look at what we can take away from that experience and how we can use it to make our own businesses better, and so we get some of the return of investment that we were expecting. So the first thing that I always look at when I think I've made a poor investment is, how have I shown up? Okay, so if I buy a course or I buy a program, and I did this, I've bought, in the last few years, I've bought a couple of courses, I've bought a couple of programs, I've even invested in masterminds, right? That I've gone into and thought, oh, no, this is not for me. This is a bad investment. And sometimes I've even invested in things, and I'm hoping everyone else can relate to this, where even before I put the money down, I was like, oh, I'm not sure that this is the right thing. And then when it shows up, it's not a good fit. And I'm like, oh, well, I'm validated now because I didn't think it was going to be great. So we've all been there. And I always look first at, how have I shown up during this experience? Is it a poor investment because of the experience itself, or is it that I haven't shown up in the way that I expected I would, or that I would be required to, in order to get the results? Now, this is kind of a hard one, because sometimes that answer is not what you want to hear. Sometimes you haven't shown up in the way that you wanted to. I've taken courses where I thought I'd have a lot more time to actually complete them, and then my diaries got like overrun with client calls and stuff, and I'm like, nah, no, didn't make time for it. And then before I know it, I'm like, oh, I did buy that course, but no, I never made it past week 3. And it's not a poor investment of the person who created the course. It's a poor investment of my time. I didn't make time for it. Ergo, I'm not going to get the experience I wanted. I'm not going to get the results I wanted. So that's the first thing we have to look at, is when we make an investment that isn't the best one we could have made, is it actually a bad investment, or are we not showing up in the way that would be required for us to get the most out of it? Okay. The second thing is it early enough to bow out? Okay, so if you buy things and it's really just not a good fit, and it's not because you've bought it and then you can't be bothered to action it, and like in example 1, but it's just the stuff that you're learning you don't actually think you can do, or actually the things that are being taught are dangerous and you find them detrimental to your business, can you get a refund? Like, have you checked the refund policy? And can you email the person and say, do you know what? These are the reasons that I would like a refund. Now, be careful with this, right? Because, it sounds odd, doesn't it? A sales coach going around saying, yeah, you can ask for a refund, and you can. Right? That's the great thing. In fact, in the UK, we have this whole law that in the first 14 days, if someone asks for a refund, you just have to give it to them. Like, unless, there are certain clauses to that. Like, you can't just give anything back to them. If they've worn it or put it in their ears or body parts, then you can't, but you can do other things. So refunds, we don't really talk about in the industry. And I have a policy on my products and services where we have a work policy, right? So within the 14 days, if you buy a product in accordance with UK law, we do have to be able to honor refund requests. But we get to specify that. So we get to say, well, you have to have done the work. Like, you can't just have a refund because you decided yesterday you don't want it anymore. Okay. So we do have a work policy on refunds. And so do many other entrepreneurs. So most of the greats, Amy Porterfield, James Wedmore, people who offer these refund guarantees for 30 days, 60 days, and so on, they will tell you, we have this refund policy, but guess what? You can't just decide you don't want to do it, or you haven't got time anymore to do the course. You have to demonstrate that you've done the work, prove that you've done the homework, send in the modules, and then you can have your refund if you've done that. If you haven't, you can't. Okay. And I think that's really fair, because then both parties have to show up as expected, right? So that's the second thing, is look at, is it early enough that you can actually get a refund? And are you getting a refund for the right reasons? I.e., is it dangerous, detrimental, something that really is out of integrity? Or do you just not want to do it anymore, don't want to pay the fee, etc., etc.? Okay, and just in case we're questioning this, the latter is not a good enough reason to ask for a refund. Being like, I can't be bothered to make the time for this, not a good enough reason. Keep it, do it in the future, make the use out of it then. The second thing is reaching out to the person you bought it from and giving them clear and honest feedback. You know, a lot of people will never approach somebody and say, hey, this isn't what I expected. My expectations were this, and they're not currently being met. Is there anything that you can do about this? And the reason that we don't is because A, we feel uncomfortable, and B, we like to moan to other people about it instead of the person in question, because it's an uncomfortable conversation to have. However, it's so much better if somebody is able to resolve your problem than you thinking, oh, they just don't care and this course is rubbish. You know, I had one of my amazing mastermind participants recently who said to me, hey, look, there are some times for calls here that don't work for me. And is there anything we can do about that? And I was like, oh, yeah, well, we could just switch this one here and we can do this and maybe we could work around your calendar there. And guess what? They're really happy. But if they hadn't been brave enough to say, here is my issue, I couldn't have solved it for them. And so they might have then been left thinking, oh God, you know, that Jess, that's such a terrible experience, but that isn't my fault because I wasn't given a chance to resolve it. So if you've made an investment, you think, oh, this is a bad investment, but you haven't approached the person and given them an opportunity to resolve it, you have to think about, are you being fair? And again, is this a bad investment or is this down to a lack of communication between you and the other party, right? The third thing is, look at what you can still learn or take away from the situation. Sometimes you make a bad investment and you just have to suck it up. I have done this on numerous occasions. Like I was saying earlier, I've bought courses, I've bought masterminds, I've bought programs, I've all the things, not just in the business arena, in many other areas as well. And sometimes I just haven't been able to get any value out of the investment. You know, perhaps there hasn't been a refunds policy. Perhaps I've reached out and given clear feedback to the person or persons running it or whatever, and it just hasn't worked. And they've said, nope, suck it up. You've paid the money, get on with it. And then I've completed the material and I haven't really gotten anything out of it and I haven't enjoyed the experience. Sometimes you're going to have that. And it's really unfortunate, you know, and it's usually the things that we spend the most on that we are disappointed by, because we have this, I'm going to talk about this in a second, expectation versus reality, right? But if you make an investment that is not good, even if it's the worst case scenario, what can you take away from that? You know, so for me, when I've invested in things like masterminds that haven't worked out as expected, I've taken away relationships. I've been like, oh, well, I met this person, I connected with that person. And maybe through those connections, other positive things have happened. So the investment itself, you know, might have been a write-off, but it led to some good things. Yeah. It might have been that I've invested in courses that were way too far ahead for what I needed at the time. And so at the time, the investment was a complete write-off. But guess what? Right now, whoop, whoop, those bad boys are paying off. It might be that you make an investment and you learn from that experience, which takes us on to point 4, right? You become a better salesperson and a better deliverer because of the experience you had. Now, this is it's simultaneously the best and worst learn from a bad investment, is that I can do this better. Because it's really frustrating for you because you're like, right, well, I've spent a ton of money learning how to, you know, or learning effectively that what I offer and the way that I work is so much better than somebody who's charging so much more or who's so much more popular or whatever. But it's also the best thing because it means that your clients, you will never oversell and underdeliver. You will never give them a bad experience. You will never make them feel like they got cheated on something. Because guess what? You're always there, right? You're there. You're open to feedback. You have a good policy to make sure that, you know, that they're getting the most out of it. You do your best to make sure that they can complete the work and get the best results. And so learning to sell, if you've ever had a bad investment, is the best thing that you can learn from that experience, because complaints effectively come from unmet expectations, right? So if I go out there and I say, hey, everyone that pays me, I don't know, £10,000 this year, I'm going to work with you and you are going to make £1 million, even if you don't have any clients currently, even if you don't have any audience, even if you are selling something that is 30 pence a product and you're not making any profit margin on it, if I go out there and guarantee they're going to make £1 million, they are going to be very disappointed at the end when they don't. Okay? And that is my fault. That is my fault as a seller. That is a lack of integrity on my part. And that will set my audience up to fail. Okay? But if I learn from my investments that I've made that haven't been great, where I have been oversold and massively underdelivered to, I then start to look at how I sell. And I think, oh, okay, well, I can make sure that I make realistic promises, and then I can over-deliver in certain areas. Like I could over-deliver in the area of support and give them more support and more accountability than they need, so that actually they are going to get better results than they ever expected. I can gamify things. I can make it more fun to complete courses and increase success rates and increase completion rates. There are lots of things that you have in your control that when you sell with integrity, you can actually make a much better living. You get diehard raving fans and you get much better results for them. So never feel like an investment has been wasted or like it's a really bad situation, really horrible investment. Take away, is there any way I can make this investment work for me? You know, can I get a refund? Can I give the person or the company feedback and try and get a better solution or resolution for us both? Can I take away anything from this situation? And if not, then learn to sell better because of it, because that will always happen. Okay. All right, everybody, have an awesome Wednesday. I am so excited that it is midway through the week. Whoop, whoop. We are over on Valentine's Day tomorrow. So on Monday, I have an episode coming to you all about Valentine's strategies and what you can be using post-Valentine's Day to make some more money in your business. Have an epic weekend. Enjoy all of the love fest that is coming. And I'll see you on Friday for a guest expert episode.